Welcome back, everyone, to the School Leadership Show. This is a special edition of the School Leadership Show, a mini-sode or mini episode. But I do have co-host Jen David Lang with me. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Mike.
So this is, we're going to do, our plan is to do a series of these mini episodes where we take a concept from school leadership and then Jen has identified several must-read books related to those to the content. So, for example, today we're going to talk about leadership resilience. Jen's identified 3 books. I'm going to tell you what the books are in a second. But really, the idea is to kind of take the curation of resources to the next level. So, if you're interested in the concept of leadership resilience, these would be the 3 books to start with. Is that kind of our concept, Jen?
Sounds great. Just like a librarian doing a book talk, we're going to introduce 3 books and feel free to choose one or all 3 to dive into.
And so the first one, I don't know what order we're going to go in, but we've got From Burnt Out to Fired Up, Reigniting Your Passion for Teaching. That was from Morgan Michael. And we did do an interview with Morgan, right, on that one?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Then we have The Mindful School Leader, Practices to Transform Your Leadership in School by Valerie Brown and Kirsten Olson. Also a podcast interview about that one. And the third one, Onward, Cultivating Emotional Resilience in Educators by Elena Aguilar. And we have a podcast interview about that. So not only can you get the podcast book talk summary of the summary, but we also have interviews about the summaries. So there's plenty of content here. So hopefully this helps people narrow things down. So we're in the idea of the vein of leadership resilience. Jen, which book do you want to start with?
Maybe I'll start with Aguilar.
Okay.
So Elena Aguilar wrote this book, Onward, before the pandemic. And it's a great book to start with for now, because Mike and I are recording this in May. And basically, Aguilar introduces 1 resilience skill a month for educators to develop for the year, starting with June. So you could follow along starting with June. And the idea is that we develop these resilience skills or habits gradually. So when something particularly tough, like a pandemic, hits you, you already have a toolbox of skills to respond. And I do like that she calls them habits, because if you develop them, then they become part of your regular habits. So to give you an idea, she suggests starting in June with the habit of knowing yourself. Do you know your emotions, your values, your personality? And of course, she gives you strategies to help you get to know yourself. Then in July, understanding emotions. I find it fascinating to understand the path of an emotion and what are our reactions to these emotions and what are some strategies so that we can respond better. Then in August, telling empowering stories, right? We choose how we interpret events. Can we do that in a way that is more positive and empowering? In September, everybody's coming back together. Schools are coming together. She suggests focusing on build community, right? When you have a strong, healthy community, when you know how to build trust, and when you know how to listen. She has a great chart for more expansive ways of listening, not listening so that someone takes a pause and you can say what you want, but listening out of true love and openness. But certainly building community will help us in times when we need to be resilient. In October, skills of being here now, being mindful, present, responding without judging, perfect for October. And then November in the school year, when things start to unravel a little bit, the skill of taking care of yourself, something we heard a lot during the pandemic. So making sure your body, your mind is well taken care of. And she also explains, if you're not doing a good job of that, what might be missing? Might there be a knowing, a skill gap, a will gap, or even an emotional intelligence gap? So she helps you diagnose maybe why you're not taking care of yourself. December rolls along and she suggests focusing on the bright spots, right? Similar to telling empowering stories, but humans have negativity biases, as we know. So how can we have more of a strengths or an assets-based approach to our thinking? In January, cultivating compassion for others as we're thinking about New Year's resolutions. That's a good idea. In February, being a learner. We are all learners. March, playing and creating. What do you do to play other than Wordle, Quirtle? Oh, that's a fun way to play. In April, riding the waves of change. That was certainly helpful. Do you know how to react positively and well when change comes our way? And finally, in May, celebrating and appreciating. So that's a great book to start with, is Elena Aguilar's Onward.
And this too. So this is about the leader working on his or herself, but also how to translate these habits into working with the staff in your building potentially too, right?
Absolutely. You could do one workshop a month and introduce each skill once a month to your staff. You could do it with your leadership team, or you could just do it yourself to reflect on these 12 skills.
All right. Want to move on?
Sure. So these are 3 great books to be focusing on leadership resilience. Again, that's the big theme for today. So Mike and I interviewed Morgane Michael. She wrote From Burnt Out to Fired Up, and another great book for now. Again, a lot of educators are experiencing burnout now, but we know in the regular course of a year, right? We do feel burnout even without a pandemic going on. So she says it's normal. It's normal to experience burnout, but you don't have to feel stuck. And most of us don't have a lot of skills to get out of burnout. And so she provides some really, really concrete strategies to help you or the educators you work with sort of reignite their passion for the field of education. And in fact, for Main Idea subscribers, I created a PowerPoint workshop so you could introduce the ideas in this book to your staff and everyone can get, more fired up. So the nice thing is that Morgane is a teacher. So it's a book by a teacher for teachers. And she created this great 5 R's framework to counter burnout. So the first R is reflect, and that's a great thing to do at this time of the year, right? You can't really address burnout unless you know what it is you need. So she really encourages you to reflect on your emotions and your needs. And she shared one particular framework developed by a therapist to help us understand some universal human needs and what you might be missing. So, some of us might be missing certainty, right? The regularity that we had year after year got blown away in the pandemic. Some of us are missing novelty. When was the last time you went to a new restaurant or tried something new? Some of us are missing a sense of significance. Do we matter? Some of us are missing a sense of belonging. Some of us are missing a sense of growth, right? Have you learned anything? Maybe we're growing too much and they've learned too much during the pandemic. And some people are feeling a lack of contribution. So that's the first R of the 5 R's is reflect. The second one is reframe. Right? So our thoughts shape our actions and we can actually influence our thoughts. Again, very similar to Elena Aguilar's book, but our thoughts, that's one area within our control. There was a lot about the last 2 years outside of our control. So how can we, when we feel challenges, look for the opportunity within the challenge? How can we lean into positive beliefs about ourselves and propel ourselves forward? So reframing is a really important skill in addressing burnout.
What I like about this one too, is she acknowledges, the idea of toxic positivity in there too. Like, it's not just pretending to be positive and happy. Like it's doing this in a deep and meaningful way and acknowledging the emotions that you're feeling too.
Yeah, I like that, a more balanced approach. So in addition to reflecting and reframing, the third one is to refocus, right? A lot of us, during the pandemic or any difficult time, you may be feeling burnout because you lack purpose or growth. So she says, now's a great time to have some goals, personal goals, professional goals, create a vision board. She has some goal setting templates, but now is a great time to come up with goals. And I think for the upcoming school year, for the summer, what do you want to do? Fourth R is to reconnect. We know that humans have a basic need to connect. And often with burnout, we're not connecting with friends, family, students, colleagues the way that we used to. So she helps us think about, what might be some of the obstacles? Are you feeling too busy? Do you not know how? Like, what are the obstacles to us connecting with other humans? And she shares 8 ways to build connection. You probably know many ways to connect, but you need a little encouragement to get off your butt and do that. And then the final R is reveal. And that's about revealing some of your identity, your true self, embracing some creativity or self-expression. And this doesn't mean you have to be the next Matisse and, write poetry. She just really means, thinking about who you are and what you love to do. Do you want to just take some photos with your phone? Do you want to cook or decorate? Or, you can bring creativity to your teaching or your job, but just really to tap in to who you are. So I like this 5 R's framework of reflect, reframe, refocus, reconnect, and reveal. And that sort of gives you a broad picture of Michael's book, Morgane Michael, From Burnt Out to Fired Up.
And this one too, you mentioned it before. She is a teacher. She wrote the book for teachers. So this one is really something that a leader could use directly with teachers to support them in combating burnout, right? That's the idea.
Absolutely. Buy some copies for people, use the PowerPoint. Great book to use with teachers.
And the last one, The Mindful School Leader Practices to Transform Your Leadership in School by Valerie Brown and Kirsten Olson. Now, why'd you pick this one to go in with the other two?
They wrote this long before the pandemic, and I met one of the authors at a conference. She was great, very grounded. But their argument is that just in everyday life, school leaders lead complex and unpredictable organizations. And even if we totally stamp out COVID, we are still going to lead complex and unpredictable organizations. And so, mindfulness is an excellent tool to help leaders deal with the stress, and not just the stress to feel better, but actually to be more productive, to lead more fulfilling lives, and to do a better job leading schools. The research is very clear. The impact of mindfulness has a very positive effect on us physically, emotionally. It improves your attention. It improves your focus, your decision making. It lowers your blood pressure. So this isn't like a selfish thing, like, oh, I'm going to work on mindfulness for myself, but you'll actually be a better leader. So imagine, observing a class and really being focused in a non-judgmental way. Imagine meeting with a student, a parent, a teacher, and just being more relaxed and current and focused. Everybody will notice. And it's not some fringe thing where you need to go, live with a monk for 3 years to develop these skills. It's very mainstream at this point. And they, 2 authors, they have some really simple exercises that you can do as short as like a 3-minute meditation. Actually, they have a 1-minute meditation in the book. So it's incredibly practical. And the idea is to help you learn to respond rather than react. Right. I think we all aspire to respond, not to react, in both our personal and our professional lives. I think there was some survey long before the pandemic that showed that 89% of school leaders were reporting high levels of stress. And I think, and you probably experienced this, Mike, as a school leader, we have the sense of like, oh, we're supposed to be, the stress gets us going and we're supposed to all feel stressed and move around, but it doesn't have to be that way. And this is really a great time to think about an alternative model of leadership where we're not running around like chickens with our heads cut off, and to really model for the larger community that we can be calm and grounded in the present and still get a lot done.
And I think it's important for people, you said it, but I think it's important to underscore it, that this isn't some kind of new age woo-woo sort of thing. The authors give real practical strategies, and they acknowledge that school leaders are busy and that there's, it can be a balance of formal mindfulness kinds of practices like, purposeful meditation, to informal things like even just being present while you're walking around, so it was nice to see that. That kind of dichotomy there, that they get that, no, I can't spend an hour a day at yoga. I can't, I don't have time for that. But there are things that I can integrate into my daily life and practice that, can help me be more mindful.
Yeah, and to give the listeners an idea, when you say formal, they write out actual practices. One of them is a 3-minute focused practice. That's it. That's one of their quote unquote formal practices. One of them is a 1-minute breathing. So imagine how much more effective you would be when an angry parent, is about to come into your office and you do a 1-minute practice. You're probably going to respond in a much better way. And informally, they suggest like mindful walking. You're going to walk through your halls, so why not do so mindfully, right? Everybody knows when they walk by the leader and the leader doesn't look up and say hello, that's awful. So now be present. Learn how to do that in a present way. Mindful listening. So imagine being able to listen to people in a way where you're present and you prevent that urge to correct or counsel, but you really try to listen and not judge and be there for the person. So, these are some basic practices that we can develop, almost like brushing our teeth. There's a great quote in the book by a neuropsychiatrist, Dan Siegel, who says, mindfulness is a form of brain hygiene. There was a time when we didn't brush our teeth every day. And I think mindfulness practice is a form of brain brushing. Mindfulness is like practicing good hygiene for the mind.
There it is. You don't want your brain to turn yellow and fall out. Our theme was leadership resilience. So you want to say more about, I think it's pretty clear, but maybe a little bit more about why these 3 books, jump out and how they kind of hang together under this theme of leadership resilience?
I think these are all skills you don't really learn in principal school, right? In my admin program, you don't learn these skills, and you go from teaching, where you're working with students, to all of a sudden you're responsible for all of these adults when you're a principal, assistant principal, superintendent. And so I think we used to call these soft skills, and I find them anything but soft, but there's kind of the interpersonal skills to deal with, but starting with yourself. Right. That's how I see the theme of these 3 books. Onward, From Burnt Out to Fired Up, and The Mindful School Leader. They're like, okay, we realize this is a people job, so I need to work on myself first. And if you're emerging out of these 2 years and you feel like you need to work on yourself, these are 3 great books to start.
And I think you're right. And the metaphor is old, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hold. What do they tell you on the plane with the oxygen mask, right? Put it on yourself first. We're in a caring profession, but we can't be caring and helpful if we're not taking care of ourselves. So we'll put the links to the 3 books in the show notes, and folks can hopefully use this as a jumping off point, perhaps for, filling out their summer reading list as we approach that time of the year. But Jen, thank you very much for this. I hope people enjoyed it, and I hope you'll send us some feedback either way. If what you think about these shorter episodes and the summaries of summaries of summaries. Something like that.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for listening to this episode of the School Leadership Show, a podcast for aspiring and practicing school leaders. Send your comments, questions, and show ideas to me, Mike, at schoolleadershipshow.com. And please consider rating the podcast in iTunes and leaving a comment. And definitely pass the show along to your colleagues.